purist eyes, one of the most important cars to ever stand out in history. Despite a moderate stock engine, its front-engine rear-wheel drive setup was one of the last of its kind, and thus it's become one of the founding fathers of drifting. This video will dive into the incredible stories around the AE86 and what led it to becoming such a cult classic. If you've never even heard of it before, you're about to learn everything you need to know. The AE86 was a submodel of the 5th generation E80 chassis code Corolla 11 and equivalent Sprinter Trueno. Although the Corolla was front-wheel drive, the AE86 stood out to petrol heads for its adjusted rear-wheel drive configuration. Toyota sold it from 1983 for model year 1984 to 1987 across its usual markets: Japan, Europe, Australia, and North America. Over its relatively short production lifespan, the AE86 underwent one facelift in May 1985. Most changes were made to the front and rear bumpers and included wraparound front lights and updated tail lights. A few changes were also made to the interior and paint color options. Under the Corolla Trueno lineup, as either a liftback or a standard coupe, the AE86 designated itself. It carries an A engine. It's based on a 5th generation Corolla, which had the chassis code E80 and the 6th variant of this vehicle. In Japan, it's often called a Hachiroku, Japanese for 86. The JDM had 3 trim levels, which could be built on either the Sprinter or the Corolla 11, the GT, the lowest, and the GTV and the GT Apex, the latter of which is by far the most desirable. North America also eventually had 3 trim options to choose from, all based on the Corolla 11, the lower level DX, and SR5, and the more aggressive GTS. The A86 came with a 1.6-liter inline-4 engine. In North America, this was either an 87 horsepower carbureted 4AC 8-valve single overhead cam for the AE86 SR5 and DX models, or a fuel-injected 4A GEC 16-valve dual overhead cam for the AE86 GTS higher spec versions. The latter was a modified version of the 4A GE used in the JDM and European models, but it was modified down from 128 HP, later 118 HP, to 112 HP to meet the ever stricter California emissions laws. Although the lower specs eventually came with the option of a 4-speed automatic, customers missed out hugely if they didn't order the standard T50 5-speed manual. AE86 in motorsports. The most significant selling point of the original AE86s was its sporting ability. Remember, it was introduced at a time when rear-wheel drive was fast becoming a thing of the past. As a result, it stood out on the market, especially for sports where homologation or road-going equivalent models need to be produced before the car can be entered into the Cup or Championship. It was especially well known for its performances in touring cars, winning the European Touring Cars Manufacturers Championship in 1986 and taking the Drivers' Championship and the British Touring Car Championship in 2 successive years, 1986 and 1987. It was also reasonably successful in rally racing. Of course, most people, especially in Japan, remember it for providing all sorts of momentum in the early days of drifting. Keiichi Tsuchiya, known as the Drift King, Dorikin, was a major player in establishing the drifting sport in Japan. He utilized the AE86, its natural properties making it ideally suited to the growing sport. He combined footage from his mountain road drifting adventures into a video called Plus Speed, which became immensely popular and spurred the sport forward. Other famous drifters who used the AE86 or some variant of it include Katsuhiro Ueno, Toshiki Yoshioka, and Koichi Yamashita. What makes the A86 so good? The A86 isn't really that quick. It came with a pretty good A-Series inline-4, but nothing special. Sure, it was rear-wheel drive, but so were most cars of the previous decade. So what made it special? What made it so beloved and sought after? The answer to this comes down to something far more pure than numbers. It's not about horsepower or engine size, not trunk volume or leg room. In short, the AE86 provided a fundamental mechanical driving experience. In a sense, it brought things back to the basics. It was well known as a brilliant car to learn and understand the fundamentals of rear-wheel drive. And because it was one of the last rear-wheel drive cars of the era, it stood out from the economy-focused competitors now flooding the market. Its handling was also fantastic, combining an excellent steering system with almost perfect 50-50 weight distribution and a light weight of only around 1,000 kilograms or less, making it the perfect base car for drifting. Most AE86 owners indeed carried out all sorts of modifications to boost the performance of their vehicles. Most examples on the North American market will come with engine and transmission swaps, suspension alterations, and changes to the interior such as racing seats. Many have been intentionally used as drift cars. This is a catch-22. The beauty of the AE86 is that it's such a remarkable base from which to develop an incredible sports car, the disadvantage is that everyone else has had the same idea, resulting in most models being redlined, overdriven, and coming in generally very well used condition. At the same time, this inflates the value of those few remaining pristine stock models, making it difficult for new enthusiasts to break into the market. In fact, an AE86 in excellent condition these days still fetches around $30,000 US. The AE86 and the GT86. When Toyota released the GT86 in 2012, the world was hesitant. It was undeniably fun, but the co-development with Subaru, who marketed the same car under a different badge and the BRZ name, led some to question it. In North America, it was also sold under the Toyota-owned Scion badge as the FRS. Other names aside, the GT86 is a fantastic homage to the vehicle that inspired it, the AE86. It's clear that Toyota always had the central points of the AE86 in their minds through the engineering and design process. The GT86 doesn't have the biggest engine. It's a 2-liter naturally aspirated flat 4. It gets to 60 miles an hour in just under 8 seconds, so it's not going to win any drag races. Some owners and reviewers complain about the lack of power. In short, on paper, it doesn't stand out against its small bracket of competitors like the MX-5. But there is something all the haters miss. The power is there once you hit the mid to high revs, and it's not about the car's quarter mile time or engine size. Instead, it's evident that the driving experience pays fantastic homage to its AE86 ancestor despite being decades younger. As a rear-wheel drive car with much thinner tires than other cars, it isn't quite as quick, but it's perfect for drifting. The steering is light and agile, and it's rear-wheel drive. The most telling part of the whole operation is that Toyota introduced hardly any updates to the GT86 since its release in 2012 through to the end of its life in 2020. Despite moderate sales figures, they continued to have the car's mission in the front of their minds until marketing and sales stopped, when the company made way for the introduction of the new GR86, another vehicle honoring its predecessors in the same ways. In fact, Toyota will release a limited 200 model edition of the GR86 called the GR86 AE86 in 2024 as a special nod to the vehicle's heritage. Some people bought their new GT86 with the automatic transmission. They missed out. The 6-speed manual is far superior for doing what the car was created to do: give you a great time and have you open the driver's door and get out not first, not looking the coolest, but with the widest grin on your face. This captures the spirit and essence of the AE86 exquisitely. Alongside its well-established place on the drifting scene, the AE86 was cemented in legend in the hugely popular Japanese anime and manga series Initial D. The main character, Takumi Fujiwara, works in tofu delivery and takes up street racing. He uses the AE86 Trueno GT Apex liftback belonging to his father to compete against his competitors, some of whom also use other variants of the AE86. Initial D highlights many true aspects of racing and the cars involved. In fact, this magazine and its subsequent shows were so popular that they're thought to be responsible for driving up the car's resale value in real life, an economic feature that many refer to as the Takumi tax or the tofu tax. The A86 will go down as a car, marking the end of an era. The loud, mouthy brawn was being phased out, replaced by the fuel-economic, environmentally friendly brain. Front-wheel drive overtook rear-wheel drive. More reliable but more complex electrical systems were quickly replacing their old mechanical versions. In this way, the A86 stood out. It was something for Toyota to hold up high as the era drew to a close. As a submodel of the Corolla and Trueno, their love for it was clear, as was their obvious understanding that the target market was fast disappearing into the legislation and mindsets of the coming decades. The A86 has always been rare in North America, and now models are few and far in between. Over time, the remaining few will slowly be scrapped and worn out, and only a few will remain, mostly in museums and factories. But the legend of the AE86 will live on.